Today, I want to welcome everybody to Science Saturday, where over the next several weeks we're going to be looking at the science behind the weather. And today we are going to start off with looking at the water cycle. So, the water cycle goes around, and there are three really major components with the water cycle. The evaporation, which is liquid water changing into water vapor and going back up into the atmosphere. Then we get into condensation, where the water vapor changes state again and starts forming microscopic little droplets, and eventually those microscopic little droplets start sticking together and we get precipitation. But lots of things go on in that process that we're going to look at in a little bit. The really neat thing about the water cycle on our planet is that we can have water, or H2O, in a vapor form, we can have it in a gas form, we can have it in a solid form, and we can have it in a liquid form. And we can have all three of them basically at the same time. So we're going to go through these individually here and just take a look. Now, if you have a question, go ahead and just post it there. I've got some help today, and we got some people watching the chat, and we'll be answering questions as you have them. So let's go ahead and start. Okay, so just as a kind of a quick review, last week we talked about the summer solstice and how important the position of the Earth around the sun is to the seasons we have. We are now in summertime in the northern hemisphere, as Carmen pointed out to us. It's wintertime in the southern hemisphere. So if you want to get really cold, you can go down to the South Pole, and it'd be very, very cold there because they're not getting much light. Now, one of the things that Carmen pointed out to us is that it takes a while for our temperatures and stuff to catch up with us. So as the sun hits the different surfaces, it just takes a while for things to heat up and cool off. There's a little bit of a lag time. The same thing happens when we're talking about the water cycle. The first step in the water cycle is what we would refer to as evaporation, and that is water changing either from a solid state to a gas state, and that's called sublimation, where it goes from a solid directly to a gas without going into the liquid state, and moving back up into the atmosphere. Now, a lot of people are very familiar with a pot of boiling water, and if you let that pot go, eventually all that water is going to go away. So we're changing from a liquid state into a gas state, and it's leaving into the atmosphere. We also have transpiration, which plants do, and we as people do too. When you exhale, the air leaves your lungs, and it takes some of the moisture from your body and goes out. Plants do the same thing, depending on the type of plant it is. And one of the questions we get asked is, well, how much evaporation can there be? And it can be a lot, depending on the time of year and what's going on. We'll look at that here in just a little bit. But first, let's look at where is all the water, okay? And on our planet, all the water is in lots of different places. The majority, by percentage, 97% of the water is in the oceans, okay? Glaciers, the ice caps, only got about 2%, all right? And you can look down the list here and see where all the different water is. The one that's really interesting to me here is the atmosphere. All right, Now, the atmosphere down here is 0.001% of all the water in the world. Now, when we look at this here, the water by volume, we're talking cubic miles. Okay, a mile by a mile by a mile. All right, that's a pretty big swimming pool. All right, and we have 326 million cubic miles of water on our planet. All right, yet 0.001% is in the sky. Now think about that. You know, a couple of years ago we had a hurricane come through, stall out over Houston, and produce over 55 inches of rain over several days, causing major flooding. So that's even a smaller amount. But again, when we get storms and stuff, they can really be very, very impactful to us. It's just a matter of where the water is and how it goes. Okay, so how do we measure that type of thing? All right, so we're going to do a little short video here and talk about some of the tools we use to measure the amount of moisture in the air. And you all have probably heard the term relative humidity before.
Hi folks, this is a sling slipometer. We use it to measure the dry bulb temperature, or the air temperature, and the wet bulb temperature, so that we can calculate how much humidity or moisture is in the air. And like I said, it's a sling slipometer, so we take it and rotate it around, and we get the air temperature. We rotate for a while, here, first time, and then we read the dry bulb temperature, which is the one without the wick on it, and we see that the temperature says it's about 81 degrees. We'll go again, we'll see if we get any temperature change with it. As you can see, it's pretty wet out here right now. It's rain and stuff, so our humidity is probably pretty high. Okay, let's stop that again. And it just went down just a little bit. Now we're about down to 80. Let me keep going. I'm just pulling off a little bit here. Very carefully, you don't want to hit anything with these because these snap these thermometers off really quick. Looks like we're good there. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put the thermometer, or just the wet bulb, the one with the wick on it, and some water. And this just happens to be kind of air temperature water. Okay. Now through evaporation, it's going to cool that thermometer down to the wet bulb temperature. And again, I'll do this a couple times like this. Here, I'll stop and I'll read the temperature, and it is at 78. Let me go again, just keep going. We want to try to evaporate as much of the water off that by evaporation into the air. Lower that temperature to the maximum. Then it's going to go down. That's going to give us our dew point depression, or our wet bulb depression, I'm sorry. And it's come down a little bit more. We're down to 75, 6, 77. I'll keep going here. See if we can get down a little bit more. Okay. And hold it at 77. So our wet bulb temperature is 77 degrees, and our dry bulb temperature was 80 degrees. And I'll show you how to do the calculations to figure out what our humidity is. All right, folks.
Okay, so what we got going on here, in the center picture here is a what we refer to as a cyclometric calculator. And at the end of the presentation, there's some websites links. If you want to make yourself one of these, you can go to one of those links there and find that. And it's simply just a couple layers of paper with some cutouts on it that have been printed up. The one that we have here at the office looks like this, all right? And the way we do it is we just simply, set the temperature for 100%, go through the instructions on it, and with those temperatures and the wet bulb temperature, I was able to calculate that our dew point was 75 degrees. Now, the dew point temperature is the temperature that the air becomes saturated, or 100% relative humidity. All right, so we had a dew point of 75 and a temperature of 80, and that worked out to be about 80% relative humidity. And like I said in the video, that was a couple days ago that I made that video, and it had rained quite a bit. I think I had about 2 inches of rain in the overnight hours and stuff in North Bossier, where I live. And so, you know, that's not unusual for early morning hours to have very high relative humidities and stuff. But, you know, at 80 degrees, there was another 20% more that the atmosphere could hold. All right. Now, the picture here on the far right is of the sling psychrometer. And, you know, that's just a tool that we use. You know, you can do it manually and stuff like that. A regular thermometer, you know, gives you the dry air temperature. So, and you want to get an air temperature of the moving air. You don't want to necessarily have to, you know, it's kind of like the bank thermometer. Sometimes they can read really high. You know, so it's just one of those things that, you know, we want to measure to see how much moisture is in the air. Okay. Another thing that we do here is we have some cooperative observers, our cooperative observer program throughout our area, and they measure the temperature, you know, the highs and lows and the amount of precipitation. At a few sites, we even measure the evaporation. Okay, so we have this device out there, which is basically just a little tank that holds the moisture or the water in it. And if you look here, there's this little pipe in there, and there is a little spike inside there. All right. So what our observers do on a daily basis is they go and they look at that spike, and they may see that the water has evaporated. So the spike is above the surface of the water. All right. Then they use this calibrated gauge here. They fill it with water, okay, and then they pour it back into the tank until that spike is just right at the top of the water. All right. And then they say, you know, through the calibrated gauge there, that they poured in, you know, 1-2 inches, how many ever it works out to be. I think each one of these lines here, you can see that is actually like 1/10 of an inch. That's equivalent to 1/10 of an inch over there. All right. But then we also have this other device, this little anemometer here. But this anemometer doesn't calculate wind speed per se. We use it to calculate wind speed, but it just counts the number of revolutions. So they have a table that they use to determine the amount of evaporation that took place, because, you know, the more wind you have, the more evaporation can take place, because, you know, you're bringing in the drier air over the surface. It's picking up that moisture and then it's carrying it away. So the more wind you have, the more likely things are going to dry out a little faster. Less wind, you know, maybe it becomes saturated over there and doesn't go too far away and stuff. Okay. Now, one of the things that we do here at our office, every day, at a minimum twice a day, we send up an upper air balloon. And as that balloon travels up in the atmosphere, we get data back from it. All right. So we see this red line here. That's the temperature. All right. The blue line is also temperature, but it's the dew point temperature. All right. So we're measuring the amount of moisture in the air throughout our atmosphere. And as you can see, sometimes the blue line and the red line get close together. So we know that that's very close to saturation there. Most likely there's some clouds at that level. But up here, where the blue line gets pretty far away from the red line, that's pretty dry. So we probably won't see too many clouds in there.